Hi y'all, my name's Misty. Welcome back to my channel. This video's late. I am so sorry y'all. This was supposed to be up Monday and it's Tuesday, and I really apologize. I will do better to keep on a schedule. It's supposed to be for Storytime Monday, and yeah, a day late. No props this time. This is a little story from my husband, actually, about him being stalked by a gnome. And when I say gnome, I mean like, if you're my age or older, you might remember the cartoon David the Gnome. Or maybe you see those gnomes sitting out in people's front yards. Yeah, that is basically what stalked my husband for several years. He saw it the first time before he started dating me, and then he saw him, I think, twice more once we did start dating. It was several months apart, actually several years apart. The first time he saw the gnome, it was at nighttime. Again, I can't say enough how, if you believe in them, which I do, fairies, gnomes, otherworldly beings are not necessarily Disney nice. They're not, they don't grant wishes normally and all that other stuff. So the first time my husband met this gnome, he was driving in his car on I-10 in Houston. That's a large freeway. And he saw it as he was going up the speed ramp. The gnome was walking basically in a gutter. This was at nighttime, late in the morning. Like early morning, like 1 or 2. And he was coming home from work. And for some reason, he just happened to glance over and look down, and there walking in the gutter was this gnome. Now, when Lee describes him, he describes him as kind of about 2 to 3 feet tall, including the hat. The red hat, it was a red hat. Sometimes you see him in stories or pictures with a green hat or an orange hat or a blue hat. But Lee said this one had a red hat. And it was walking along the side, and it noticed that Lee noticed it. And it flipped him off. It gave him the bird. I know, interesting, huh? Lee said that he had the long beard and everything, but he was like kind of grubby looking. I mean, I guess you would be too if you were walking along the side of the freeway in the early morning. So that was the first time. That was before Lee started dating me. I asked him if anything was going on in his life around the time that he saw the gnome, and he's like, no, nothing really particular. And these other times that Lee's seen the gnome, nothing really was going on. It wasn't a warning or anything like that. No banshees or anything. So second time, we had been dating maybe about 2 years. We were still living in Houston at the time, in an apartment complex, and we had opened up this little bookstore. And sorry, coffee. It's the elixir of life for me. And I remember I was sitting in our apartment, and Lee came home, and he was like, I saw the fucker again. That's pretty much how he's always prefaced the gnome stories. This time, though, again, the gnome was on the side of the highway, but this time the gnome was selling roses. Lee said, same gnome, same look, dirty, mean, ornery gnome. And he said that the gnome had a little bucket next to him with some roses in it. And Lee said there was a moment of recognition. And again, the gnome flicked him off. And that was it. That was the second time that Lee saw the gnome. Now skip ahead several years later. We're living in the Texas town that we moved to take care of my father. And we were living in a little apartment complex. Now, the first two times that Lee had seen the gnome, it was at nighttime. This next time that he saw the gnome, this was broad daylight. And we had moved from a front apartment that had one bedroom to an apartment in the back that had two. We moved there because at that time I had my boys and we needed more room. And so he was pulling in and he saw the gnome again. This time the gnome was pissing on the AC unit of the apartment complex we used to live in. Again, Lee saw the gnome. There was that moment of recognition, and then the gnome, again, say it with me, flicked Lee off. So, I still don't know why this gnome was stalking Lee or following Lee or shown up in several different occasions. Gnomes are very earth-based. My husband really is extremely water-based, so maybe they were letting him know that he needed more earth-based energy in his life. I don't know. It's just one of those funny stories, and it's one of those things that once you start seeing stuff like that, it kind of keeps coming on back into your life. Another one that's not my story, a friend of ours, we used to know back in Houston. He hung out with us and had a kind of like a passing belief in other worlds and other beings, and kind of sort of believed. He was like Lee and I. We're skeptical believers. We don't believe it until we see it. And but he, we always talked about fairies and stuff like that. And he had a very stressful job. A job that he didn't enjoy, he didn't like, and it barely paid his bills. And one night he had a particularly rough time at work, very rough time. And he left work frustrated, angry, and upset. So on his way home, funny enough, down the same highway that Lee saw the gnomes a couple times, he was driving, and in an open field, he saw a large fairy ring. Now, when I'm saying fairy ring, I mean a ring of mushrooms. These have always been thought as gateways into the other world, or places where fairies have danced the night before, things like that. So it's, not considered a good thing for you to, mess with these rings of mushrooms when you see them. Well, like I said, he had a really bad night, extremely bad night. So for whatever reason, he pulled his car over and he jumped out of the car and he went into this field and proceeded to smash the hell out of this fairy ring. Completely destroy it. All the time cursing fairies. You fucking fairies, stupid fairy ring. Keeps going on and on and on like that. And when he got done, he said he felt better. He said he felt a lot better about this. So he continues his drive home, and he gets home, and there is about 3 inches of water in his apartment. I know, you're saying, but Misty, his water heater broke, a pipe busted, and I would say, yeah, that would be my first guess too. But when he called the emergency number for his apartment complex, and they all came out, they couldn't find where this water was coming from. It wasn't coming from the upstairs apartment. He didn't have any busted pipes. He didn't have any, busted water heater. There was just an inexplicable 3 inches of water in his apartment. And the next day, he set one of his dishes on the counter, and it just immediately cracked. And they're actually a couple days later, which I think is the reason for the water. They just hadn't looked hard enough for it. Was his water heater did bust. And he just had a real bad string of luck for a couple of months there for a while, until he moved in with us before we left for where we moved to be with my father. So do I think the fairies had a little bit to do with it? I don't know, but I still probably wouldn't pull over and kick the hell out of a fairy ring if I happened to see one. So those are some stories for today, and I'll see you next Monday. I promise. I'll be back Monday. I promise. Don't know what I'll talk about then. Probably might have another scary story for you, or maybe just something a little different. I'll think of something. Okay? All right. If you want, like and subscribe. I would love to read some comments about maybe your own fairy experiences if you've had one, or just, something kind of odd and unusual that happened to you. I would love to hear it, and if you give me permission, I will tell your story on a Monday. Okay? Bye, guys. See you later. Thanks for watching.